every successful person I know comes to really love and appreciate and do with tender, loving care every aspect of the business they're involved with. Filing taxes. If you don't do those things with care and love and attention to detail, you're not going to succeed.
Michael, Harry, welcome to the Oxford Talks podcast. How are you guys doing today?
Very good.
Just great. Thank you.
That's amazing. For the folks that, of course, you don't need any introduction whatsoever, but the people who don't come from the world that we, with the design and everything, how would you introduce yourself to them? Starting with you, let's say, Michael.
My name is Michael Bierut. I'm a graphic designer. I've been practicing graphic design for 45 plus years in various capacities. If people don't know what graphic designers do, we were the people that back in the day used to do things like design books and magazines and movie posters and logos. And many of us still do things like that, but we also now do things in the digital realm, in the world of data, motion, animation, film, interactive design as well. So all of it is graphic design. And I'm a partner in the design firm Pentagram. I work in the New York office there.
Amazing. Harry?
Oh, like Michael, I'm also a graphic designer. I've been in the same office in Pentagram in the London office for 20 years. So I'm one of the younger partners. I'm one of the just earning my stripes. But like Michael, my whole career has been graphic design. I've worked in many different types of businesses, from cultural to institutional to you name it, since the kind of mid-80s when I started. So I joined Pentagram 20 years ago, this month actually. On the same kind of course.
20 years this month. Isn't that a remarkable journey, isn't it?
It's phenomenal. And it's like being in a great family, a really wonderful, supportive, open, brilliant family. But a family that's actually kind of constantly changing, which is a strange thing to say, but it is. It's in momentum and moving. And we are at the moment 23 or 4 of us.
24, depending on how you
24 of many different, cultural backgrounds, work types, you name it. But we share, and
that's the
wonderful kind of supportive tolerance and.
Yeah, and one of the things that stood out, thank you so much again for recently inviting me to the Pentagram studios. I believe we are one of the first people who have been let in with a camera, and we had unprecedented access. So that was really amazing, looking at the workshops. And I think the most striking thing was for me, number one, I think I just felt so lucky yesterday that the Pentagram partner meeting was happening, which we have heard about. Like, this is, you meet every sort of quarter or so.
Well, this last 2 days actually is a pre-meet.
Pre-meet,
okay. It's a little gathering of a representative group who will gather. They're gathering in London this time. Next time, which will be in May, will be in New York, and then they would follow up with a 3 or 4 day gathering of everybody, either in the West or the East, in different places every time.
Yes, and
the main one's yet to come, but you saw a little.
That's the week. That'll be the week after next. Actually.
Yeah.
Okay. Striking thing for me was the colleague that you've been working with for almost 25 years, Dom.
Oh gosh, no, 35, 30, so about 38 years actually.
38 years.
Yeah.
And Michael, Harry was just telling me that when they moved over to the new offices, they specifically made sure that the teams are sitting next to each other. It's a brotherhood that you describe it to me. How amazing is that?
It is. We met in my first job back in the mid-80s in London. This is Dominic Lipper I'm talking about. And then he and I both worked in 2 agencies together. And then in 1990 set up our own studio, which we had for 16 years. And then we just moved lock, stock and barrel into Pentagram, brought the whole thing and just dropped into Pentagram studios when we got asked. And it's been fantastic. And he and I, as I was saying, we have never had a crossword, which is extraordinary, isn't it? In all those years, and we've been there for each other. And I think we were kind of held apart when we first came in because we thought we might have been a bit of trouble. I think we proved
some little cabal within.
So we've been allowed back together again, and we just share a same
Michael, I was going to ask you actually, so was it the case that Harry, you got interviewed by Michael when you were joining in, or how did that work?
That didn't happen that way. I mean, but
Well, I knew Harry already.
We actually, quite a lot of us know each other before anyone joins. Probably you're all in.
Okay.
We're all in this industry. We're all watching each other. We're all kind of clocking what's going on in terms of the things you are affected by and love. What happens is, and I mean, the way it happened to me is, two of the London partners, one specifically approached me to see if I'd be interested, and then the second one, and then we were, then you kind of you're brought in, you talk to, and you get kind of interviewed by everybody, including Michael and everyone, to see if we're fair game.
Michael, I want to go back to that time when you were interviewing Harry. How was that? How was meeting Harry for the first time, if you can remember?
I remember being struck by how tall and handsome and charming it was, and how short and
That's what
relatively
happened to me yesterday.
ugly I was. And also like it's a very interesting partnership, and we have clients who have professional services partnerships, or they could be architects, they could be lawyers, and I'm always struck by how we're similar in many ways to any typical professional partnership, but this underlying commitment to the idea that we are at our base friends, and friends as well as colleagues, with this sense of mutual trust, mutual responsibility, and mutual admiration, I would say. I knew Harry's work before I met Harry. I met Harry, and he just had, to this day, but even then, no less, exuded this sense of optimism and energy and curiosity about the world. And it's very interesting because we've tried a couple of times. I don't know if I mean, you may have been party to this as well in London, but we tried a couple of times to, there've probably been more than 50 partners who have kind of passed through Pentagram, the 5 founding partners back in 1972. And the successive generations of partners have joined the firm, withdrawn as they, either aged out of it, or in some cases, a few rare cases, actually passed away at their desk, not literally so. But so there have been these successive waves of people. When I joined, when you joined, we were relatively young. I was 33 years old when I joined in 1990.
What are you talking about?
And now I'm 68. And so it was 36 years ago that I joined. But I remember other firms will say, hire a consultant who is a headhunter, in effect. Find people that meet this profile. They'll give you some names, and you'll even go ahead and do some blind dates. And it just has this transactional check the boxes quality. Whereas, I think I probably met you a good, 8 years before you joined, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and knew Harry's work. And so many of us were friends before we became business partners. Paula Scher, who, along with me, is one of the most long-serving partners in the New York office. I probably met her in 1983, when she was, they had just come out of CBS Records and set up her own little scrappy design firm. And she was a little bit older than me, so I looked up to her as a big sister, as someone whose name I knew from record jackets I looked at, in my lonely bedroom in Ohio. And it would say cover design by Paula Scher. And I was like, this woman seems impossibly glamorous. And, and here we are 4 decades on as business partners. And so, if you know lawyers, they'll say they're friends and colleagues. But I think at the end of the day, the business association with many such partnerships, becomes the framing element that dictates the rules of engagement that all the partners have. Here, I would say it's flipped on its head. I don't think I've never had a discussion where we brought in a partner where we thought this guy will make us a lot of money, or this guy is filling a hole in our offer that we really need to succeed commercially. It's just, and you were a proven commodity, but I think we often will just identify someone who seems really talented and who seems like if they were given a bigger platform, which Pentagram does provide, they could do some extraordinary things, and we don't even know what those things are. And sometimes we guess wrong. So, and often someone will join, it just doesn't quite click and work out. And then those people become alumni who will show up at at reunion parties and kind of social gatherings, and they're embraced as if they had served 30 years, even if they only passed through for 3 years and said, that was fun, but I'm on to the next thing. It's an amazing structure it's amazing. It's sort of like probably to any proper management consultant, a stupid, not fully profitable and kind of very wild, woolly, and inefficient structure, but it's the one that's been prevailing, since 1972, and still kind of seems to deliver a kind of a product.
There's a bravery to it.
Yeah.
It has. It's a brave institution because it takes risks every time. With you think someone's a sure shoe in, and they don't prove right, and some people are kind of a real outlier, and they come in and they're extraordinary. It's extraordinary kind of mix. So it's a little kind of gamble all the time, but based on there are a few criteria. One is undoubtedly the quality of people's work, the ability to self-sustain themselves. But one of the biggest criteria is, are they people that you want to spend your days and actually weekends and weeks with? We all go away together on these things, and you're investing deeply in a person, not just in a business.
I'm going to ask you, starting with you, Michael, because we've had this discussion in previous series with you, Harry, that Pentagram does have a very unique structure. But for the kind of a new design studios which are being set up in last 3-5 years, what are the things that you're going to say that are perhaps maybe a bit of a miss signal out there that is going out there, that it's very hard, and again, we talked about this, very hard to replicate this. What are the things that you're going to say to those kind of a new studios popping up all around the world that, yes, we have been set up like this, but these are the key ingredients, which some of them you mentioned, but you will just say, okay, I would highly suggest not to set up like this, because again, Harry, you mentioned that it's very easy to take advantage of this structure, super easy. And that's something you don't want to do when you're setting up kind of a new structure. So what are the things that you would say? Mike, starting with you.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because we don't make a secret about what the structure is, and it's based on a couple of seemingly contradictory factors to a certain degree. There is no hierarchy within the partnership. The first day you're a partner, when you join, you have the same authority to kind of make decisions about you're responsible for your own business, and you have full authority over the choices you make about that business. You don't have to, there's no kind of partnership within the partnership to whom you have to go for approval to kind of like, should I take this client? Can I hire this person? Can I do this? Can I do that? You're given this astonishingly broad latitude to conduct your business whatever way you want. There is no president of Pentagram. There's a rotating chairmanship that kind of was established again a long time ago, and kind of has this orderly line of succession where it's traded off every 2 years between one of the partners. But that person has no more authority. They just sort of are the beleaguered person who collate all the different sort of issues that are arising and sort of try to dispose of them in one way or another. So that idea of independence is key. The idea of equality is key. And then the thing that sort of seems to contradict that is that each of those partners runs what amounts to on paper an independent business with its own responsibility to track overhead and to track income based on client work. And so each of us, Harry and each one of the other partners, will have a profit and loss statement every month and at the end of the year. And so and lawyers do this too, I know. And what lawyers have is something called a compensation committee, who work out really complicated formulas about how much of this work do you originate, how many hours did your team bill, how profitable were you on that billing job, what was your, all these things, and then you add them all up together. So everything sort of gets paid each according to how much work they did and how profitable they were. At Pentagram, crazily, they decided way back at the founding that they weren't going to do any of that. They just were going to divide it up equally. So one guy,
which is crazy to hear.
Ain't it though? Yeah, it is. So like one person maybe has $1 in profit, another person has $100 in profit. They each get $50 at the end of the year. And what's interesting is that it's sort of as you kind of implied. Of course, that there's a potential for abuse of the system there, but what we've discovered, because I think we bring in partners very carefully. As you said, each one is like interviewed by the full partnership.
And it can take quite a long time.
Yeah.
It
And
isn't
it's a long intake process over probably 18 months or so in truth. And I think the trust, everyone has to have like absolute trust that this new person is someone who will come in as a colleague who will respect the system. And often, someone who, when I was brand new there, I obviously wasn't, I didn't have the capacity to command the fees that the older partners who I was now supposedly equal with did. But I felt, there was a self-imposed pressure to kind of be responsible for my part of the business. And I think the clarity about that and the transparency about that is actually really, really healthy. It can put pressure on people. If you're having a bad year, no one wants to have a bad year. And no one ever says, um, I'm a talented person and I deserve to be, I deserve my partners to serve as my patrons, to just give me money to let me go off and do fun things while you guys actually do the hard work. It's like so different from the ethos. It's like, and I swear over the years, I've talked to different ones of my partners who might be having a bad year, and I'll just say, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Just do good work and the money sorts itself out. And by and large, that is absolutely the case.
Sure.
So what's funny is that I think every partnership functions that way. And designers who, unlike lawyers, are not necessarily enthusiastic about mathematics and
sheets and
I think compensation committee, if there was such a thing at Pentagram, can you imagine what
I've heard of
a debacle that would be? Just horrible. And I always said, but first I thought it was some principle I thought it was some idealistic, collectivist principle that was, about this socialist, each according to his ability, from each according to his ability to each according to his need. Now I sort of think it's because there's a bunch of people who went to art school and kind of got discouraged by higher arithmetic and didn't want to work on. It's just as divided equally. That'll be easier, and we'll figure it out.
I love that, Harry. I want you to follow up to that, but given with the lens of ego is a thing that can easily.
I mean,
how would you?
I think some of the reasons why other people either have not managed this or don't actually try and do this, and other people appear to do this, but they don't actually do it to the truth of the way we do it, is you have to realize that you matter less than the greater ideal of the group. You have to give up to that completely. And it is about a constant state of giving, and I think when you're a designer driven into your work and everything, that's quite a hard thing to get used to, that you just have to let go to the greater group. And there are issues that come up where the group mean more than your single opinion. And we don't vote. We, around the table, everything is, to painful degrees sometimes, is debated, chewed over. This is a lot what happens when we go away. And it's not always comfortable, but we find a collective way through things. Now, that is a way of life, and it's probably not what you're thinking about when you're deeply into your beautiful artistic work, I think, is what you have to commit to as a constant thing. So it's so, that's a lot of stuff that goes on beyond just, running your business, and being part of that is not easy. Boy, does it bring benefits. And I mean, there's a lot of us have been in this for a very long time. And, it really pays back. But that's not an easy thing to take on. So I think that's interesting. As far as I know, there is no other agency or company that's exactly has done what we have.
There are some rock bands, I think, that sort of have models that are like that, where even they go off and do solo albums, and then they'll sort of everything goes into a common thing. But I think what everything Harry's saying is absolutely true, and what makes it actually such a complex and carefully managed organization in many ways is that the people we seek to participate in it are not necessarily temperamentally predisposed to be, give themselves over to collect.
That's what I was asking. I think I asked Michael, I think the difference between design and decoration.
Yesterday.
Yesterday, like it feels very kind of like, this can be just like, I designed it and this needs to be used this way, versus, oh, I didn't have time and I just asked like an interior decor to this.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's just the difference between um, functional. It's anything sort of like functional efficiency and pleasure. It's like, if I mean, we know now exactly how nutrition works. There's no mystery to it, and someone could manufacture some substances that you could consume every day that would completely and efficiently satisfy everything you needed to live in an extraordinarily healthy way. Just kind of, here are three containers. Consume this one in the morning, this one at lunchtime, this one at dinner time, and you won't want for anything. You'll live to be 120. But is that ever that's what I describe as a dystopic view of the world? Because what happens is the cuisine of individual cultures, of individual regions, of individual chefs, of your mom, of that favorite cheap thing you can buy at that store on the corner that reminds you of when you were a kid. All those things which are doing exactly the same functional thing. They're all in some way kind of sustaining life in a human organism, you, and yet they're also freighted with all this other information which you are imposing on it. I mean, sometimes it's, it's stimulating your taste buds in different ways, but basically all the associations of walking into a favorite restaurant, meeting someone you haven't seen in a long time in a pub, going home for a holiday and being with your family, and, that dish that has come out every year, the same, and everyone now, they don't even know whether they like it or not, but it's so emblematic of this gathering. It has this totemic power. These are all of us are making sort of, in effect, design decisions that are these things, and they're all individual, and they all have the capacity to communicate at larger scales. And I think if you're a big, snack company or food company, you're trying to do it at a global scale. If you're, the head of a family who's responsible for putting dinner on the table at Christmas time or whatever holiday you want,
So true.
you do it another way. But I think, and you're making all these choices. This is the time of year we use these plates. Auntie, someone has got to bring that salad, or else everyone's going to be mad. I mean, it's ritual, it's choice, it's about everything. So I think it's designers have to really be conscious of what gives people joy, what gives people pleasure, and understand that I think a lot of times consumer culture, the corrosive quality that it has, is sort of alienating people from their own sense of what gives them pleasure and joy, and kind of, by using media, sort of confusing people about using those things as, signals to other people that, hey, I'm wealthy, or hey, I'm like these people I admire. It's complicated.
The choice thing's interesting because if there was a place of reassurance that you return to, and every time you return to it, it was different, you'd go nuts. I think, if you came to Christmas and you could choose 4 different plates, but actually you just want to return to the thing that makes it real. I find the same thing with mixes of music, or 4 album covers for the same album. And I want to have I want the singular thing, the thing that I can. And there may be other occasions where that variety actually is for a different reason, but I kind of want to settle on an interpretation and a feeling that will stay with me, and it's an interesting thing that, so suddenly broadening it all out kind of can do the opposite.
And it's interesting. I'm thinking about one of your projects, particularly, Harry, but I think designers, when we're educated, a lot of the thing the premium is placed on is the capacity to create something completely new, which is exciting. And it's something that, again, moves the world forward. But, I mean, when I got into this business, when I was a kid, I thought if I could just design album covers when I grew up like Paul and Cher. Be a
Yes.
dream come true. I've never designed an album cover ever. Uh, you would think if you were a young designer, like designing for the music industry, that's like really what could be more fun than that. And I'm thinking about the work you did for Pink Floyd.
Well, for Dark Side of Me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was, in a way, what made that work so powerful was you conducted this process of distillation about I mean, that's one of the most, for me personally, that Dark Side of the Moon is the most evocative single two-sided albums that I've ever had in my life. I mean, I can remember like exactly where I was in different points of my adolescence hearing that. You know, I know side one, side two, I know how it goes, you know, and I can hear and a snippet of it, you know, if if it just kind of pops up in my life, I'll hear it and it'll send me right back to a moment. And the cover of it, that Hypnosis cover with the prism on it, right? Hypnosis, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it sort of is, so you think, Pink Floyd, how cool. I have carte blanche. I can do whatever I want. You can't do whatever you want. There's this responsibility you have to people you've never met who already have a sense of ownership over that visual language. And you have to, your responsibility is to them to kind of make sure that the work you're doing is honor that connection that they have and to kind of figure out a way to deepen, broaden, extend, amplify that connection. And what's there already is giving you so many clues about what you can do. But I think it's, when Harry was talking before about, you're putting things out in the world, you have to do it in a responsible sort of way. There's the obvious things that have to do with, ecological sustainability and things like that have to do with truth versus lying, that have to do with a lot of different things. But a lot of times it has to do with, you're not entering into a world that's a giant blank slate. You're entering a world where everyone is already has grown up making marks on it and trying to figure out, what kind of, how they navigate it based on their own sense of what the visual language that they've encountered over their years has been. And I think if you sort of are sensitive to that, it helps you really figure out how you can contribute to it in a way that really does add meaning.
Michael, what do you feel is the most, at this stage in your life, and Harry, I'm going to ask you the same question. What do you feel like the most, what's the biggest responsibility do you have at the moment now? As designers, as I've heard yesterday that, Michael, that you're slightly stepping away from the roles as well. Famously, I've heard from you saying that the difference that you spent between 9 till 2 a.m. was the difference in your career. And you famously said afterwards, I don't recommend anyone should do that anymore.
Yeah.
What do you feel like? What's the thing that you want to pass on now?
Well, I think, I mean, it's a cliche to say this, but I have not only children, but grandchildren at this point in my life. And, you worry about the world that you're you're giving them. And sometimes I worry that the kind of conversation we're having is, will be looked back as an artifact where people have the luxury just to muse about things like this. And the world is, there's existential threats in the world that, that the very things that have brought us prosperity are also kind of jeopardizing our survival, right? For all kinds of different reasons. So I think, what I think of now is I mean, you come into it and you're sort of like the youngest person in the room and you're just there to kind of like soak things in and come up with an idea and hope that someone will notice that you have a voice and something to say. And, Harry started the way, all our partners started the way, millions of people in creative and other professions sort of like start that way too. At the other end, you sort of realize that what you have instead is sort of a certain amount of wisdom sounds pretentious, but you have some experience, which is putting you in a position where you can kind of assess things differently, change your mind about things even, go from kind of being like a leading proponent of, hustle culture and the grind, which I was for years, to thinking, when my lovely wife, Dorothy, just sent me an interview with someone who said, the biggest mistake some people make is mistaking being busy for being alive. And I made that mistake a million times. And so my own personal advantage, it led to my success and sort of contributed to a lot of things in the world. But it's different, you sort of realize, and I think Harry's I've learned a lot from Harry because I think he sort of is someone who has this capacity to really be present in the moment and to actually be more contemplative about the work that he's doing as opposed to just sort of this relentless drive to the next and the next and the next thing. So one of the things that I think I've encouraged my own children to do, and when my grandsons are interested in hearing my point of view about these things, I would tell them the same thing too. It's like, the moment you're in now is only it will never happen again. And, you have to sort of like try to be always in those moments. It'll make you a smarter person, connect with the people in your life that that you love and you're close to, but connect, you're going to be ordering coffee from someone or a near miss on the sidewalk. And each one of those people is another human being on earth that you're sharing this moment with too. And I think being conscious of all those things, I do think it makes you, to the degree we want to instrumentalize it, it makes you a better designer.
Yes.
It makes you a better person, a better citizen in a way. And I think it's very easy to kind of, in a way, I feel very fortunate that I was born when I was born. And people usually say that because they think, oh, I would not like to have been born in the 17th century and die of dysentery at the age of 28, But I also am glad in a way that I wasn't born later because I don't really know what social media would have done to my brain at the age of 14. Really frightening.
Yeah.
I had, the limits of communications technology in the 1960s and 1970s meant that I was omnivorous and voracious for stuff. I was I could live in a library. I could go to a record store and literally spend 3 hours standing and going through the bins. Like literally. Records I would never buy, records I couldn't afford to buy. They cost like $5, $6. Who has that kind of money? But I was like that. And I can't imagine what would have happened to my, what kind of person I would have been had I been able to like stay up all night, just clicking, scrolling. It would have been terrible. And so I think, it's actually hard to give advice to people to whom that world isn't some, novelty that was introduced midway through their lives, but something that they've never known otherwise. Right. And I think I actually have trouble getting my mind around that and trying to figure out, what relevant kind of advice what relevant kind of way of living you can model for someone who's kind of been brought up in a way that I think is radically different, actually. So, my responsibility when I'm talking to, even I have 2 restless grandsons, and I've noticed that there's a real trick to making them behave, and it's simply giving them your attention and responding to what they're doing in real time. And, they'll settle down and they'll sort of like start listening, and better still, start talking or asking questions or giving you the answers to questions or telling you about something that they heard or that they saw or showing you something they did.
I learn a lot.
Yeah, and you learn so much from that, and you come away from that better. And I think it would help someone who's 5 or 7 or 15 or 17 or 25 or 27. I think that sort of thing is really easy to lose or really easy to mistake for something else that people are doing all the time, getting a lot of response to an Instagram post or putting out a TikTok that does something or whatever the hell is people are doing when they're managing their individual brands. That's something that I don't think that should be against the law, and I wouldn't discourage anyone from doing it. But it's the kind of busyness that you can mistake for a living, and they're 2 different things.
The busyness being taken it as aliveness. I think that I'm going to live with that for a very long time. Harry, what would you say about yourself?
For me, if I think about why I've done what I've done in terms of my life and my career, is there was a point when I realized things were really moving me. whether that be music, be art, literature, or whatever. And I had this longing to make things that I could move other people in the same way that I had been moved. And I had that simple little thought, and I would love to have been a singer. I'd love to have been a writer, and I'd love to have been a painter, because I wanted to just move things. And what I've tried to do really sincerely in my work is to use design to create feelings and move people how I've been moved by design. That's my, if I boil it all down to the simplicity of that, is because I know what my life, how my life has changed by things that have moved me, whether that's a piece of music, even something simple that someone said that just made clarity when I had none, like a simple kindness. And in a way, a piece of design can be a simple kindness that brings clarity and change when there is none. And I know it's profoundly simplistic, but for me, it was so much about feeling that I wanted to just chase that feeling and make things that would, create feelings that the way I move people. And I think we both mentioned several times, is about this sense of responsibility, that what we make and how we make, whether that's in the environment, whether it's on people's minds, whatever, that I hope I can look back and people can look back at what I've made and said that I did it with sincerity and honesty. And in some way that can be some kind of, I don't know, guide, people can see that and perhaps chase that down a little bit themselves. But, and I, as you know, William, I was seriously ill 6 months ago, and I had a major operation. I actually had 6 months out of Pentagram, and sort of viewing it from the outside, I had to be very still for a very long time. And I think I chime completely with Michael's thing about the busyness and appearing to move forward when actually you're probably treading water.
Yeah.
In a very, like the roadrunner, in a very over the mountain. I can see now, and I'm 3 years behind Michael, and I've got 4 grandkids too. So my life's changed immeasurably in the last 4 years. But I can see now that there has been so much energy that I could have not spent in unnecessary ways. It's exactly the same sentiment, Michael, is about. Don't sweat the small things. It's the big things that really count. And it's so much about kindness, and it's so much about attention to other folk, whether that's family or people in your own business or people on the street. I caught a bus home late last night from an event that Michael was running at our studio with a couple of the other partners, and I was sitting next to this old lady who couldn't reach the button to stop and I could see her getting panicky because she couldn't press the button to stop the bus in time to get onto a stop. And it was so lovely to just reassure her and then be able to, I've got long up, so I could make. That was one of the highlights of my day, getting her off the bus. And I know, simple stuff like that. But
I'm going to selfishly ask for an advice. As someone who is a designer at heart, but just happens to be that I have to run businesses, and we do these Oxford talks. They're all about kind of a designing. People come with their 20 years of life, and then you have to compress it into a 10-minute talk.
Yeah,
takes a lot of mental effort into just do all of that. But I see that is one way of designing things as well. And someone who's working with payments and all kind of stuff. With my partner, we recently started a small kind of a design work as well with 3D printing. That's something we're going to be working on. What advice would you be giving me that, yes, you have to do all the business operations, everything, but to be true designer throughout the life, what should I learn and what should I just take an advice from you today?
Well,
both, actually.
for me, I
I
think you have to. It has to come from your heart, build from your deepest. Make it because it's part of you, and I think you'll be happy then because it's driven from that place. It's not a fictitious thing that you're chasing because it's a cool thing to do. Do it from here, and good things will come out of that. So I no matter whether the hustle of running the business, the getting the next job, have that moment where you're making something that is sincerely genuine. And I would, because the rest is all going to be changing around you, right? If we'd talked about AI, whatever we'd said today would be different. We'd need to say something different next week. All this stuff is shifting and moving like crazy. Find that thing that is the thing that is the constant and is sincerely part of you. I would try and do that.
Thank you. Michael, something from you?
I would say, make sure you love all of it. I think a lot of times people that are starting businesses, they go into it because they're interested in one aspect of it and they actually don't like the other aspects of it. And every successful person I know comes to really love and appreciate and do with tender loving care every aspect of the business they're involved with. Tedious things like invoicing, collecting on overdue payments, filing taxes. If you don't do those things with care and love and attention to detail, you're not going to succeed. And, if you just look at the restaurant business, there's so many people that open restaurants because they love to cook and they love to eat. And that's great. But that isn't running a restaurant. That's like the moment the plate lands on the table, that's that part. But there's all that other stuff you have to do. And if you actually think, well, I don't really want to bother about that, but then invite people to your house, or go as far as being a sous chef, but no further, whatever you want to do. But like, it's sort of everyone I know who's successful is sort of really ends up being again, we're interesting. I think a lot of what we talk about today are these funny contradictions.
Yeah.
You have to be both very focused and single-minded, but you also have to be expansive and have almost 360-degree vision around everything else, and make sure that you're aware and being inspired by and conscious of your effect on all those other things. And I think the people I've known who are successful kind of approach the world that way. The people who kind of come in thinking, I've got this one thing I want to do, and why won't the world let me do that one thing I want to do? I think sometimes they're geniuses, and often they just set themselves up for a lifetime of frustration and disappointment. Because that's not why the world is here, to let you do that one thing you want to do. The world's here to inspire you and to let you have an effect on it and let it have an effect on you. And you have to, as Harry said, be kind and generous and kind of be ready to meet that world on its own terms. And I think no matter what business you're in, whether it's opening a restaurant, being a designer, being an accountancy, I think all of those things come into play in terms of, at the end of the day, whether you live a happy life every day of the week, and whether or not you leave a legacy behind that makes the world you were in a better place.
Thank
I
you
think
so much
you
for that,
can
Mike.
pull that back to when Pentagram works well, all those things.
Oh, exactly right. Yeah.
You can't come in and be just a designer. You're coming in and running a business with us all, and taking care of everything. And Michael's it just right back to Pentagram principle.
Gents, my last question to both of you. So we have this tradition. Harry knows about it before. So you do have to recommend a piece of literature, ideally a book that you will love. Harry, you can't do the same choice again.
Can I not? Can I give you? I give you another book, a different book.
Yes. So just to Michael, so what we do is we ask each and every guest at the end of the episode, like, what's the kind of piece of literature they would recommend? We actually buy the book and we send it to one of the random person who comments or likes or whatever. And then if possible, we try to connect that person back to you. We did that with Harry last year.
Exciting. That's great.
That was just a wonderful. And again, and that's really piqued my interest, because that person literally said to us that there's just nothing, not a lot at least online, about Harry, about Pentagram's, that partner, like how he approaches his life, how he approaches design. I was like, if that can be a medium to connect people, that would be wonderful. So, Michael, I'm going to start with you, and Harry, then I'm going to come to you about. So what would be that piece of literature?
My favorite book about creativity is an old book that was published in the late 1950s. And it's not about design. It's not about art. It's about art to the degree it's about the theater. And it's a enhanced memoir, I would call it, by a director and playwright named Moss Hart, Mosshart. And it's called Act One. And he called it Act One because he had either been talked into or he talked his publisher into publishing a memoir when he was still in mid-career. And he at that point had on Broadway he was the director of My Fair Lady. When he took it to Broadway, he was an extraordinarily successful playwright who had this long string of hits. And the book, interestingly enough, is not about his glorious career, but it's only about the first half of that career. And it ends with him opening the first Broadway show that was a success for him, which was which came aboard in the 1930s, called Once in a Lifetime. And he gives this minute account of growing up. It's a New York story. He grew up in Brooklyn and had just loved the theater, worked at the lowest rungs of it with a bunch of other scrappy young people, and insinuated his way into things and always wanted to like be a playwright, never thought he had it in him. The first half of the book ends with him sitting around to write his first play. And then the second half of the book is how he brought that play to fruition on Broadway. He's paired with a collaborator, a guy named George S. Kaufman, who was a successful playwright who was his mentor. And you sort like, I mean, I can't imagine a more boring book where it's basically two guys write a play. And, but he describes it so vividly and in a way that I would offer would be extremely familiar to any creative person, because the play they're working on is unsuccessful. And just like a designer, he's doing something that it's just not a matter of him doing it alone in a room. Then he's satisfied with it and he unveils it to the world and they all clap. He needs actors, he needs producers, he needs funders, he needs collaborators, he needs all these people audiences, all these people to show up to make this thing work. And it just isn't working. And he keeps fiddling with it until finally at the finally he hits on the thing that actually makes it successful. And the passage where he realizes what he's been doing wrong in the plot, and he sort of thinks, oh, I can fix it. What I do at the end of this moment, if I just twist it around, and he throws out everything they've done and goes in and says, this is crazy. We've only got like a week to do, but we can fix this thing and make it work. And it's so I can't tell you, I've reread it so many times, and I've never, never acted or directed a play or anything. I sit in the audience, I sit in his audiences, I've seen his plays, but it's as an account of the creative process. It's extraordinary and timeless, I would offer. So it's called Act One, Moss Heart. It's still in print. And I bet you've never read it. It's very American, very New York story, but it's amazing. I just love it so much.
We'll make a note of that. Definitely. Thank you. Harry, which one was going to be yours?
Now, the thing is, I remember the book, but I don't remember the author, which is a really...
We'll find it online.
You find it? Okay. Well, it's called Black Elk Speaks.
Okay.
And it was actually a transcription of a series of interviews with I think a Sioux Indian in the late 1800s. Who was a visionary, extraordinary, and it's probably one of the first times that a white man was allowed to sit down with an Indian, and this Indian transcribed his life to him. He was a very old man when it happened, but he just told his whole life from extraordinary experience as a child in the villages and everything he went through, and he was incredibly ill as a child. I mean, to the point of dying. But in that illness, he suddenly got this ability to almost have second sight, and he became deeply intuitive, and he could literally walk with the others and say, 3 hills over there is a big herd of buffalo. If you just keep following this, we'll see them in 2 hours. We'll be with them, and exactly that would happen, and many other things. But what came of that, and it isn't just that. What came of that is a profound wisdom. And this story is the story of his life growing towards this wisdom. It's called Black Elk Speaks, and I think it's the life of a Sioux Indian, and it's phenomenal. So it's 1800s it was written, but it's an inspirational book for me. And
Perfect. Harry, Michael, absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Well, thank you. It's our pleasure. Thank you so much.
This has been a legendary conversation. As I've been saying again and again that, if someone asks me, I don't know if anyone ever will, but we are designing a Mount Rushmore for designers. Who are you going to do put up? And Harry and Michael be by name. But guys, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
It's my pleasure. It was great sitting with Michael.
Yeah, love talking to Harry.
We don't get often enough chance to do this.
Thank you.